My name is Tyler Smalling, and today I will be explaining my personal philosophy of music education. In the beginning of my career in education, I found myself at a standstill. I thought of teaching as a process rather than an experience for the students, an experience that will shape them as human beings. The Greek philosopher Plato said, human behavior flows from three main sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge. These three items all relate back to teaching, not only in subject matter, but in engaging a student's inner being. The desire for knowledge begins with emotion. If we feel encouraged to learn, we will want to learn. My freedom and my students' freedom will be supplied with my ability to remain open-minded to everything they say. Students have too much potential for someone to tell them they cannot do anything they believe in. Nobody should waste these gifts that each of us have in fear of what others will think of them. Throughout my studies in education in general, I've come across a few items that have shaped me as a person, teacher, and student. I believe my philosophy stems from John Dewey. Progressivism, the focus on the child as a whole, rather than on the content or the teacher. Progressivism is also identified with liberalism, which is the belief in social justice and mandates for advocacy. Freedom. John Dewey's beliefs about education elaborates further on the effects of increasing outward freedom that a student receives. By doing so, a teacher creates positive outcomes. Foremost, the teacher understands the student's willingness to trust an instructor based on his or her response to stimuli, which also draws forward a student's individuality and self-identity. The following outcome is an enhanced response from the student in body language. As he or she becomes more engaged in the mind or spirit, it will begin to show through in the motions and engagement of the body. Lastly, through these increasing levels of bodily interaction, the student will undergo an improvement in maintaining their physical and mental health. Dewey believes that a sound mind is carried out through a sound body. Therefore, a freedom of outward action is a means to freedom of judgment and power to carry out deliberately chosen action. John Dewey once stated a primary responsibility of educators is that they not only be aware of the general principle of the shaping of actual experience by environmental conditions, but that they recognize in the concrete what surroundings are being conducive to having experiences that lead to growth. Above all, they should know how to utilize their surroundings, physically and socially. They exist so that the students can extract from them. They have to contribute to building up experiences that are worthwhile. This relates to Abraham Maslow's theory in Toward a Psychology of Being, where he presents a few characteristics of a healthy human being. One of them is the ability to have a clearer and more productive perception of reality. This creates a more open outlook on reality, which as a result increases the wholeness of a person. A real self will affirm one's identity. Learning is a necessary and universal aspect of the process of developing culturally organized, specifically human psychological function. People that are aware of the life around them create awareness of the student's knowledge outside of the classroom. Freedom is a tool to foster creativity. By giving students freedom with a minimal amount of guidance, they have no choice but to make their own decisions, which contributes to their growth mentally, physically, and emotionally. Freedom in the music education classroom mostly relates to how freely you let your students experiment with their creativity. My favorite article that used a unique display of creativity while conducting the classroom as a community was Hickey and Webster's 2001 article, Creative Thinking in Music. Hickey and Webster believe that one of the main ways to foster creativity in students is for teachers to encourage students to think in sound when in choral rehearsals. By doing this, it motivates the classroom to constantly think critically about the sounds they are hearing. Students are then able to audiate and memorize different sounds and harmonic structure, which allows them to become more connected to the music they are performing. Teacher can instill a sense of trust by making their students believe, through inclusion and affirmation of individuality, that every student's involvement makes a difference. By allowing them to realize what barriers, whether social or institutional, hold a student back from feeling safe in the classroom, a student can become more aware of their own power and knowledge as an individual. In the article Application of Critical Pedagogy to Music Teaching and Learning by Dr. Abrahams, he elaborates on how education can expand the perception and relation of actuality and reality inside and outside of the classroom. In his article, Dr. Abraham incorporates traits of Paulo Freire's pedagogy. A good learning environment should develop the student and teacher's potential, which is based on the communication and the forming of relationships of teaching in the classroom. This backs up his multiple theories in his educational philosophies. The theory of value: what knowledge and skills are worthwhile learning. His theory of knowledge: what is knowledge and how is it different from belief. His theory of human nature: what is human being and how does it differ from other species. His theory of learning: what is learning and how are skills and knowledge acquired. Theory of transmission: who is to teach, by what methods. His theory of society: what is society. His theory of opportunity: who is to be educated. And his theory of consensus: why do people disagree? Education should raise the awareness of the students so they become subjects rather than objects of the world. This is done by teaching students to think democratically and to continually question and make meaning from everything they learn. The critical view: knowledge is a social construct. The elite naturally believe that they are better and anything else is naturally inferior. There are many things that limit the success of the oppressed majority. Non-critical thinking is a source of many limitations. Some poor people see no way out of their conditions. Learning is a process where knowledge is presented to us, then shaped through understanding, discussion, and reflection. In my opinion, the biggest roadblock in music education and education in general is the lack of social justice awareness. This can be avoided by the incorporation of conscientization, which is defined by Paulo Freire as the learning to perceive social, political, and economic contradictions, and to take action against the oppressive elements of reality. If used in a receptive way, it could be useful in the understanding of history and how we developed into what we are today. This can help students understand their own personal historical background, which when effective can help realize what to applicate in the classroom to help students' personal needs. You need to get to know who your students are. In Julia Shaw's 2012 article, The Skin That We Sing, she talks about being culturally responsive. If successful at being culturally responsive, you can ensure that your curriculum will make reforms with a child-centered approach. Teachers will be able to be effectively responsive in the student's cultural background, resulting in strengths and the knowledge of the child's needs. We need to make learning encounters that ethnically diverse students experience more relevant to and effective for them. What would be interesting would be a curriculum that involved not just a general music class, but a music around the world class, where you can study different culturally based music and the influence it has or had on Western music. The effects of this approach will develop personal meaning, interpretation, self-social, cultural understanding, and relate them to expression, which will spark a better understanding of who they are in the world. Teaching is a political process. It must be a democratic process to avoid teaching authority dependence. The teacher must learn about and from the student so that the knowledge can be constructed in ways that are meaningful to the student. The teachers must become learners, and the learners must become teachers. Overall, music education should give students a voice in and a knowledge of the outside world. Music education can be used in multiple ways aside from putting notes on a page. It's a life tool to use when in need of releasing emotions, stress, or to just be creative. It's a form of discipline in an organizational and behavioral context. It's more than just learning notes and patterns. It teaches more than just sounds. It teaches you how to be an eccentric piece of this world. It teaches you how to be a person with communication skills, cultural and social awareness, and how to express yourself. It teaches you freedom.